I was holding a cup of cold sweet tea in one hand and a rusted-out chain in the other when Karen pulled up in her silver Lexus like she owned the world. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped impatiently on the steering wheel, and through the windshield, I could already see her mouth moving before the window even rolled down. "Why is this locked?" she snapped, pointing at the new gate I'd installed that morning. I kept my voice calm. "Because this is my land, Karen. Private property." Her eyes narrowed like I'd just insulted her entire family line. "Don't be ridiculous. This road connects the back of our neighborhood to the main road. It's always been open." "Not anymore," I said, looping the chain through the iron gate and snapping the padlock shut with a loud click. "This ranch has been in my family since 1952. You've been using this as a shortcut for months without permission. I'm just putting an end to it." Her lips tightened. "Do you know who you're dealing with?" I did. Everyone in Larkwood Acres knew Karen Whitmore, former HOA president, self-declared community watchdog, and full-time pain in the butt. But until today, she'd just been an entitled nuisance. I didn't expect her to slam her car door, yank out her phone, and bark into the receiver, "Yes, I'd like to report someone blocking a public access road with a locked gate. He's threatening me with it." My jaw dropped. "What the hell are you talking about?" But she turned away from me, one hand dramatically shielding her eyes from the midday sun like I was about to draw a gun on her. "He's unstable. I feel unsafe," she whispered loudly enough for me to hear. "Yes, please send someone. I'm near Larkwood Ranch. Hurry." The wind died. Even the cicadas went quiet. That was the moment I realized, this wasn't going to be a civil conversation anymore. This was war. Flashback to 3 months earlier, and none of this had even started. Back then, my life was quiet, maybe too quiet. After my dad passed, I moved back to take over the ranch. It wasn't big, not by Texas standards anyway, but it was ours. Fenced in by cedar posts, it stretched across 40 acres of golden pasture, 2 barns, a worn-down farmhouse, and an old dirt road that curved along the property line. That road wasn't part of the official neighborhood layout. It was supposed to be for tractors, cattle trailers, maybe the occasional FedEx truck that didn't want to risk muddy gravel during a storm. But the moment the new housing development sprouted up next door, that road turned into a suburban expressway. Minivans. Joggers. Kids on scooters. Teenagers speeding through like it was their shortcut to school. I let it slide at first. Figured it was temporary. But when someone knocked down one of my fence posts and didn't even leave a note, I knew something had to change. And the worst part? Karen had taken charge. "She says it's the neighborhood's right to use the path," my sister Michelle told me one night over dinner. Apparently, she found some old map in the county records showing a public easement. "Yeah," I said. "Then she can take it to court. Until then, that gate stays locked." Michelle gave me a warning look. "Just, be careful. Karen doesn't lose quietly." She wasn't kidding. Within a week of me locking the gate, someone spray-painted "Selfish Hick" on my mailbox. Trash started showing up on the ranch side of the fence. My Amazon packages disappeared. I even found a dead squirrel nailed to the front post. But the worst was Karen herself, circling the entrance in her car every afternoon, making a big show of turning around like she'd been personally wounded by the inconvenience. Then came the day she decided to bring the police. So there I was, standing in the driveway while 2 sheriff's deputies stepped out of their cruiser. One of them tipped his hat politely. "Sir, we got a call about a blocked road. Mind explaining what's going on?" Karen stood nearby, arms crossed, eyes blazing with self-righteous fury. "This man is cutting off community access. We've always used that road. It's unsafe, it's controlling, and it's probably illegal." I took a breath. This land is privately owned. Always has been. The road is not public. I've got the deed and the survey maps inside if you want proof. Karen scoffed. "It's public use by default. Everyone knows that." The older deputy glanced at his partner, then at me. You mind showing us that paperwork? Not at all. I walked back into the house, adrenaline burning behind my eyes. This wasn't just about land. This was about respect. About not being steamrolled by someone who thought power and noise could replace truth. When I came back, I had the documents in hand, yellowed originals my dad kept in a fireproof box under his bed. The deputy flipped through them carefully, eyes narrowing as he traced the boundary lines. After a long silence, he turned to Karen. "Ma'am, this road ain't public. It's on private property. He has every right to close it off." Karen's face drained. Her mouth opened like she had more to say, but nothing came out. Then her eyes turned to me, dark, vengeful. "You'll regret this." She climbed into her Lexus without another word and peeled out down the gravel. The deputy handed the papers back. "You're in the clear. But something tells me she's not done." I nodded slowly, staring down the road where her car had vanished. "No. She's just getting started." For the first time in weeks, the ranch was quiet. Peaceful, even. The gate was locked, the road was empty, and the only sound I heard was the soft creaking of the windmill in the distance. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt like I just poked a rattlesnake with a stick. Karen didn't show up the next day. Or the one after. No angry emails. No HOA letters. No passive-aggressive notes taped to the gate. But I knew better than to think she'd given up. And then, 3 days later, I found a certified envelope in my mailbox. Inside, a formal cease and desist letter with Karen's name printed right under the law office's header. According to her lawyer, Karen believed she had established access rights due to years of community usage and was now pursuing a legal easement by prescription. I didn't even know what that meant until I Googled it. Basically, she was claiming that because people had been using the road without my objection for a certain number of years, she and the rest of the neighborhood had earned the right to keep doing it. Like squatters' rights, but for a dirt road. I nearly laughed. Until I realized this was real. And expensive. I called up Mr. Jacobs, the same lawyer who handled my dad's will. He was old school, but sharp as a tack. After looking over the papers, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Well, it's weak, but not impossible. If she's been building her case, taking photos, collecting statements, it could make things complicated. Especially if a judge thinks it's in the public's interest." My stomach dropped. "So what do I do?" He scratched his chin. "We fight. But first, we gather proof that you never gave permission. Signs. Maps. Testimony. If we can show it was always private, and that you're just now enforcing it, we can shut this down." I walked out of that office with a manila folder full of legal jargon and a migraine coming on. But Karen wasn't just coming for my road anymore. She was coming for my name. My rights. My home. And I wasn't letting that happen. The next weekend, I put up 4 new signs along the fence line. Private property. No trespassing. Big, bold, and legal. That night, I saw Karen's Lexus drive by again. This time, she didn't stop. But she did slow down. Long enough to glare at the signs with the fury of someone who'd been personally betrayed. I should have known what that meant. Because the very next morning, I woke up to find tire marks in my field. Not on the road, through the field. Somebody had driven around a fence, plowed through the tall grass, and carved out a path along the edge of the creek bed. I followed the tracks all the way to the back fence, where someone had cut a brand new hole in the wire and made themselves a fresh exit toward the cul-de-sac behind Karen's house. I stood there in silence, fists clenched, heart thudding. This wasn't just Karen being petty anymore. This was trespassing. Sabotage. An act of war. I called the sheriff again. They came out, took photos, filed a report, and said all the right things. But even I could hear the doubt in their voices. "Hard to prove who did it without a camera," one deputy muttered. I knew who did it. And I was done playing nice. Michelle came by that evening with a casserole and a look of concern that said she already knew something was wrong. "You need to be careful," she said as we sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the hills. "Karen's not just some soccer mom with a temper. She's got money. Influence. And if you push too hard." "I own this land, Michelle," I snapped. "I'm not letting someone bulldoze through it because it saves her 6 minutes getting to Target." She nodded slowly. "I know. I'm just saying, some wars cost more than they're worth." I stared out across the field, eyes locked on the new path through the grass. "This isn't about a road anymore," I said. "This is about someone thinking they can take whatever they want just because no one's ever told them no." Michelle didn't argue. She knew I was right. The next day, I bought 4 motion-activated trail cams and set them up around the fence. One near the gate. One near the new tire tracks. 2 along the creek bed. Hidden in brush. Tucked beneath old branches. Waiting. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the porch light off, waiting in the dark. Around midnight, I saw it. Headlights. Moving slow. Creeping along the outer edge of the pasture like a snake in the grass. And then, just like before, it cut through the field. Straight across the grass. Toward the creek. Only this time, they weren't alone. There were 2 vehicles. The first one looked like Karen's Lexus. The second, a white pickup with a rusted bumper and a yard sign in the back, "Vote Whitmore for HOA President, again." I watched them disappear behind the ridge. And I smiled. Because this time, the cameras were watching too. The next morning, I pulled the SD cards, plugged them into my laptop, and watched the footage. Clear as day. License plates. Faces. Even Karen stepping out of her car to move a branch blocking the path. She wasn't just using the road. She was organizing it. And now, I had proof. Proof of trespassing. Of property damage. Of criminal intent. But I wasn't going to the cops. Not yet. Because if Karen wanted a war, she was going to get one. On my terms. By the time Friday rolled around, I had a folder full of trail cam footage, time-stamped and dated, ready to bury Karen and her entitled army of HOA followers. But something inside me whispered, "Don't just win. Teach her a lesson she won't forget." See, when someone like Karen gets caught, they don't change. They just find sneakier ways to break the rules. The only way to stop her was to shine a spotlight so big she couldn't wiggle out of it, even if she tried. So I made a plan. And it started with the town meeting. Every month, the Larkwood Township held an open forum at the community center, mostly for zoning issues, noise complaints, and the occasional squabble over lawn decorations. But thanks to Karen's constant campaigning and self-promotion, it had also become her personal stage. I knew she'd be there. And this time, so would I. That evening, I shaved, ironed a clean shirt, and brought my laptop, a portable projector, and every last clip from the trail cams. Michelle came with me, holding a folder of her own, records from the county office proving that the dirt road was never public, never intended for community use, and had always been listed under my family's property line. The room was half full, mostly retirees, parents with toddlers, and a few of the same HOA board members who'd driven through my pasture just nights before. Karen sat front and center. When she saw me walk in, her face didn't flinch. She just gave me that smug little smile like I was some uninvited guest at her party. I smiled back. The mayor opened the floor for comments. Karen stood first, of course. "We have a growing concern in our neighborhood," she said, her voice as sweet and fake as the flowers on her designer blouse. "A vital access road has been illegally blocked by a resident who thinks his personal land matters more than our community's needs." Gasps. Murmurs. The room leaned in. Karen went on. "This shortcut has connected our neighborhood to the main road for years. Now we're being forced to drive miles out of the way, because of one man's selfishness." She stepped back like a queen making her final decree. I waited a beat, then raised my hand. Would it be alright if I spoke? The mayor nodded. Go ahead, Jordan. I walked to the front of the room, opened my laptop, and connected it to the projector. What appeared on the screen wasn't words. It was video. And the first clip was Karen, driving onto my land at midnight, headlights flashing through the field. Her face dropped. The second clip, her getting out of the car, dragging a branch off the path so a white pickup could follow. The third, a close-up of her license plate. The room went dead silent. This is my land, I said, pointing to the screen. It's been in my family for over 70 years. This so-called shortcut is private property. It's not part of any public easement. There's no record of it ever being intended for neighborhood use. Michelle stepped forward and handed the mayor the county records. He scanned them quickly. His brow furrowed. But instead of asking or negotiating like a neighbor, I continued, some people decided to take matters into their own hands. Cutting fences. Driving through my field. Sending me legal threats. And worst of all, calling the police on me for trying to protect my land. Karen stood abruptly. Those videos don't prove anything. That road's been used for years. He only started locking it because he's bitter and antisocial. I looked right at her. You're in the videos, Karen. You moved the branches yourself. You organized this behind the scenes like it was your personal mission. And now you're lying in front of everyone just to save face. Someone in the back chuckled. Someone else muttered, unbelievable. The mayor cleared his throat. Karen, did you file for any kind of community easement with the city? No, but... Then you had no legal grounds to use the property without permission. Karen's face flushed red. And for the first time since this whole mess started, she had no comeback. Just silence. That night, word spread like wildfire. The HOA was furious, not at me, but at her. Turns out, Karen had been lying to the board for months, saying she had verbal agreements with me and my family. That the land was in dispute, and that the neighborhood had a historic right to use it. All lies. I didn't have to press charges for trespassing, though I could have. The videos were enough. Enough to humiliate her. Enough to kill her shot at re-election. Enough to destroy her little kingdom of control. The very next week, the HOA called an emergency meeting and stripped Karen of her title. Her campaign signs disappeared. So did the smug looks. And the traffic through my pasture. Gone. But there was one more thing I needed to do. I went back to the edge of the field, the part where they'd cut the fence, and rebuilt it myself, one post at a time. It wasn't just about fixing the damage. It was about making it stronger. I added more signs. Added cameras with infrared. And on the gate, I hung a new plaque. Private property. Protected by generations. Just before I left, I looked down and noticed something in the dirt. Tire tracks. But this time, they stopped at the fence. Whoever it was, they'd turned back. Maybe it was Karen, taking one last look at what she'd lost. Or maybe, just maybe, she'd finally learned what happens when you mess with the wrong rancher. 2 weeks passed without a single trespass. No tire tracks. No notes. No silent drive-bys. For the first time in months, I woke up to a ranch that felt like it used to, quiet, strong, and mine. But I wasn't celebrating yet. Because people like Karen don't disappear quietly. They lie low. They lick their wounds. And then they come back with something nastier. I knew she wasn't done. I could feel it in my bones. It was Michelle who called me one Tuesday morning, her voice tight. You need to come to City Hall, she said. Now. I dropped everything and drove straight there. When I arrived, Michelle was already inside the records office, pale and fuming. She pointed to a document spread out on the counter. It was a petition. Filed by Karen Whitmore. She was pushing for the city to seize a portion of my ranch through eminent domain, claiming it was, in the public's best interest, to reopen the dirt road as a permanent access point between the Larkwood subdivision and the main road. I read the words again, heart-pounding. Eminent domain. That was serious. If enough signatures were gathered and a hearing was held, the city could legally take my land, pay me whatever they deemed fair, and pave the road permanently. And Karen had already gathered over 80 signatures. Michelle whispered, "She's going all in, Jordan. This is her last play." I looked at the document, hands trembling. She hadn't just gone behind my back. She had rallied the very neighbors who once smiled at me in the grocery store. People who waved when I drove by on my tractor. People I used to mow fields for, help fix fences, or haul fallen trees after storms. Now they were signing away my land like it was theirs to offer. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the porch again, watching the stars, thinking about my dad. He taught me what it meant to hold your ground, not just the soil under your feet, but the values behind it. This wasn't about dirt. It was about legacy. So I called Mr. Jacobs the next morning. And I told him I wasn't backing down. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. City Hall. Public. Everyone welcome. Michelle came with me again, this time with a binder full of notarized statements from longtime residents backing me. Old ranchers, former city officials, even the retired mailman who'd driven that route for 25 years. All of them swore the same thing: the road was private. Always had been. I also brought a printed booklet of my trail cam photos. Karen's trespassing. Her leadership in the midnight road raids. Even a clip of her boasting during a coffee meetup at the community center, caught on video by a parent who'd grown tired of her manipulations. When we walked into that meeting, Karen was already there. Flawless makeup. Arms folded. An expression like she'd already won. She didn't see the camera crew behind me. Local news. See, I tipped them off earlier that week. Community leader tries to seize family ranch, was the kind of story they loved. Especially when the family ranch belonged to a veteran son and the leader was someone with a history of HOA complaints stretching back years. The mayor opened the floor. Karen stood first again. She gestured toward me. "We've been more than patient. But this individual has used intimidation and barriers to cut us off. He's weaponizing private property to punish the community." Gasps. A few people nodded. Then the mayor turned to me. "Mr. Daniels. Would you like to respond?" I stepped up. Heart pounding. Hands steady. I opened the binder. This is my land. It's not just a patch of dirt. It's my father's work. My grandfather's sweat. My childhood. I've maintained it. Paid taxes on it. Fenced it. Patrolled it. And never, not once, did I grant permission for it to be used as a public road. I turned the page. These are statements from people who've lived here longer than any of us. They confirm what I'm saying. This was never public. I clicked the projector remote. Karen's trail cam footage lit up the screen. Gasps filled the room again, but this time, they were aimed at her. Driving through at midnight. Organizing others. Lying to the sheriff. I let the silence hang. Then I turned back to the mayor. Karen says I'm punishing the community. But the truth is, she's punishing me. Because I said no. Because I didn't give her what she wanted. I pointed to the petition. She wants to use the law to take what isn't hers. Not for public good. For personal revenge. The mayor looked down. So did the board. And then he spoke. After reviewing the evidence, this council finds no legal grounds for a public easement or seizure of land. The petition is denied. Applause erupted. Someone shouted, "That's right." Karen stood frozen, lips parted. Her face was bright red. The news cameras swiveled toward her. And in that moment, I saw it. Defeat. Not just a loss, but the realization that she'd gambled everything, and lost it all. She resigned from the HOA that night. Moved out of the neighborhood 2 months later. Rumor was her husband finally had enough of her antics and filed for divorce. But I didn't ask. I didn't care. The road stayed closed. The fence stayed strong. And I kept the plaque hanging on the gate, right where she could have seen it every day if she'd won. Private property. Protected by generations. Michelle and I rebuilt a few more things after that, parts of the barn, the north pasture, even the old tractor Dad used to drive. But more importantly, we rebuilt peace. The kind you only find when you've stood your ground, faced the storm, and made it out stronger. Because the truth is, some land can't be bought. Some families can't be broken. And some gates, they're never meant to open.